اللهم صل على فاطمة.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين، لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين، روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. So dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So welcome back everybody for our second Fatimiyya program. Alhamdulillah, Allah has given us 2 days in the house of Zahra. Now this year, brothers and sisters, the lecture series has been titled Valued by God, Establishing Islamic Self-Worth and Dignity. Now, what we're trying to do is to collectively review a revolutionary child-rearing process, the result of which, if it's done correctly, will lead to our children, the future of Islam, being self-motivated instead of just relying on outside pressures, on parents, on children, on community. And this is very important, that the children themselves, they find that motivation within. I want to give one example from the Ahlul Bayt, and then after that, inshallah, we'll go into our discussion. The example from the Ahlul Bayt, brothers and sisters, would be that of Ali Akbar. I want you to look at it in this way, though. So you see one caravan that's moving and facing off against the whole world. 72 warriors, a small group of mu'mineen and mu'minat facing off against a superpower. Remember, it wasn't popular to be in that caravan at that time. There were a lot of naysayers. So now, at this time, then on top of all of that, Imam Hussein had that famous dream. Ali Akbar, now you see him. He had that famous dream, and he wakes up after dozing off, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un, and then Ali Akbar spurs his horse, and he rides up to his father, wants to check on his dad. He said, what's going on? The Imam tells him the meaning of the dream. Right? It's sudden death. We're going, definitely. Then Ali Akbar asks him a question. He says, Falasna ala al-haq? Aren't we on the right path? His father reassures him that's the case. Confidently, the youth then says, Idhan la nubali bil maut. Not worried about death. Doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. It's clicked inside. I'm motivated. I'm moving. So when we're talking about this discussion of karama and the idea of the person, their inner voice being awakened, their moral compass being realigned with divine values, then this is a very, very important stance. If we do this, and by the way, I'm not saying that there isn't a means or isn't a role for outside encouragement. We do have to have outside encouragement. We all need al-amr bil ma'ruf wa nahy anil munkar. I'm not denying that. But the idea would be the internal motivation. Something that in the words of the Ahlul Bayt is called the inner voice. Example, let me give you one of the hadith from Amirul Mu'mineen. First, salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This is what the Imam says. He says, Man kana lahu min nafsihi wa'idh. If there is a person who from himself finds an inner admonisher from himself, he says, Kana alayhi min Allah hafiz. This person actually has a protector from God. The inner voice is there. My conscience is alert. My conscience is awake. That's driving me. That's pushing me. So now, In this case, I want you to contrast that with how sometimes people are raised where it's my parents who are keeping me practicing. I have to basically drag my children to make them pray. I have to constantly watch out, make sure they don't associate with this person or that person. I'm pushing them constantly. I'm on the outside. The internal or external motivation is what's keeping the person going. But let's say I could have this miracle happen, and the person, it clicked inside, where they, the person, the individual, they recognize the position that they hold with God. What's my purpose? If a person realizes their own purpose, then they're very different. Let's look at one of the ayat of the Quran. So this verse is Surah 51 and verse number 56, where Allah says this. Again, this is about realizing that purpose. If it clicks, if I have that sense of I'm valued by God, why did Allah put me here? Ayah of Quran. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسِ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created the jinn or the men, illa, except liya'budun. My purpose is creation, right? My purpose, the reason I was created was to serve God, servitude, to be an abd. But I've realized that it's not just the outside world telling me or commanding me or trying to move me in that direction. So, if a person is kareem, if I've recognized the worth that God has placed on me, why I'm here, naturally that person finds the obedience of Allah to be beautiful. It's in line with my purpose. Why am I here? Because I find worship beautiful, I'm naturally drawn to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The internal motivation is there. Hadith now. Our discussion about karama, if that can be internally established. If I can feel God values me. Hadith now. This is from Amirul Mu'mineen. He says, innamal karamu. So karama, the sense of self-worth, dignity, value. Karama, he says, innamal karama at-tanazzahu anil ma'asi. Dignity is only found in staying away and avoiding ma'asi and sins. A dignified person, a person who realizes their value, stays away from sin like the plague. It's ugly, it's beneath me. That's very different from you have to hold me with a gun to my head to stop me from sinning. I think it's hideous. I don't like it. My moral compass has been realigned with divine values. The idea, though, the trick was, let's start that early. Because children, when they're first born, they're all born on the fitrah. Our job as parents is not to mess it up. They're already aligned. It's the tarbiyah of the parents that changes things. So this is for all of us as teachers, as staff, as a school, as a community. How can we interact in such a way that we are instilling this sense of divine self-worth? Now, I want to mention something else. This is a little bit about how the Kareem views the dunya, the world that we live in. Now again, let's remember what we learned yesterday. We were going to identify or define our objectives. After that, I have to interact with others. So my child is observing. I have to interact. My children are watching. I have to interact with others so that they see the values that I'm trying to push. Finally, the last part of it was the idea that my direct interactions with them also reaffirm those divine truths. So, how does the Kareem, the person who enjoys karama, view the dunya? Now this one, brothers and sisters, if you don't mind, I'd like to give some practical examples for all of us kind of just to look at, to examine, because ideally when we're sitting in the house of Zahra, our job was first to correct ourselves. We're not here to learn to, first let's correct ourselves and then we'll perform our responsibility. When you and I look at the struggles that people face here in the dunya. We find that people are going through all kinds of issues. Everybody's getting something. Everybody's tested. Our tests are different. You don't know what my tests are. I don't know what your tests are. But we're all going through something. Let's look at the words of Imam Ali. He says this about the dunya. Darun, the dunya is an abode. Darun bil bala'i mahfufa. This is an abode, the dunya. It's an abode which is surrounded with bala. So everybody's facing trials and difficulties. There's no escaping that. Now, if you don't mind, let's start thinking of some of these challenges that people face, knowing that sometimes the challenges are so great that the person would pretty much break. Now, you and I, let's do something else too. Let's remember that the challenge for somebody else is very real for them. We're not going to trivialize the challenges that somebody else is facing. Yes, for me, that might not be a challenge. That might not break me, but we're all in the dunya. We're all getting tested. Everybody has a test. So you, brothers and sisters, will think of your test, right? But everybody's going through tests. So examples. These are now, again, for first of all, me as a believer to act, to model, to view the dunya the right way, and then also my interactions with my children so they see this. So let's say there's a believer, a mu'min or mu'mina, and this person has lost their job. Right? Financial difficulties. I'm a man. I know I'm supposed to support my family. I've lost my job. It wasn't my fault. A sister stood for Islamic values when she could have done the wrong thing. She insisted on wearing the hijab, for instance. She stood for it, then she lost the position. Right? So people are losing their jobs. There's a reality. Sometimes it's a physical ailment, right? Outwardly, my dunya is very good, but sometimes you get told that you have a terminal illness or a long-term illness. Sometimes the person is doing all of the right things. They're trying to get married, they can't. Trying everything. It just won't work. It's as if there's a lock somewhere. Sometimes, no. I was married. I am married. I'm doing all of the right things. My spouse isn't a great person. I'm in the midst of a messy divorce. These are challenges you and I, we know. There's people who are going through everything. And for each person, that test is incredible. For the non-kareem, the person who doesn't enjoy karama, sometimes it feels like the test, whatever their test is, will break them. Because it's so difficult. It might be my health, it might be whatever it is, but it literally feels like the person feels like my mind's crumbling because of the test. Now, what happens is, and again, we're not trivializing these things, but in reality, many of our tests for us are the dunya. Our test, although it's terrible, we're not trivializing that, but our test, it's some aspect of the dunya that's making me feel like literally my mind, the walls are caving in. Now, what does the Imam say? Right? Because we're going to contrast these two traits. The Imam says this, Man hanat alayhi nafsuh. The person who doesn't have that deep sense of divine dignity, divine self-worth, they don't feel that they are somebody in Allah's eyes, what happens? Man hanat alayhi nafsuh kaburat ad-dunya fi aynihi. In this person's eyes, the dunya is everything. My dunya is caving in. The person might even say things that they're not supposed to say about Allah, at least internally. Why me, God? Any test but this? Internally, the person is, right? But if we're looking up to the root cause, the Imam says, the person who's breaking under this, the dunya is everything to this person. The opposite of the mu'min. The mu'min will see the hadith. What does karama do for how I view the world? It's very different in the eyes of the mu'min. Hadith. So on one side, we see that some people are going through tests, and we know everybody's going through tests. But the result of me going through these tests is very destructive coping mechanisms. Sometimes even physical effects from this test. You'll see that the person, sometimes you'll see displaced anger, like real rage. Sometimes deep depression, like there's a physical effect of the test, deep depression. Sometimes the coping mechanisms are not so self-harm. Like it gets ugly when how we're coping with these things because this test is so severe. But the Kareem, the person who's recognized the position that they hold with God, their reaction is very different. How is the person who has karama when it comes to the dunya? Imam explaining. He says, Man karumat alayhi nafso. The person who enjoys that deep sense of Islamic self-worth. Man karumat alayhi nafso saghurat ad-dunya fi aynih. The dunya is insignificant in this world, in this person's eyes. The dunya with all of its magnificence, all of the challenges, the person finds the dunya is insignificant. Why? The Kareem values their relationship with God. It means something to be the best of Allah's creation. For the person who values their relationship with God, God is so grand. Anything that's happening in the dunya is insignificant to me. The motivation of the Kareem for not sinning is also different. Why is it that people don't sin? The Kareem avoids sin, but why? Again, how grand God is. Hadith. The hadith says this. The Prophet is addressing Abu Dhar. He says, Ya Abu Dhar, O Abu Dhar, La tanzur ila sighar al-khati'ah. Don't look at how small the sin is. He says, rather, walakin unzur ila man asayt. Look at the person who you're disobeying. God is so great that no one should dare to disobey him. Right? So the person who has a sense of karama sees that their value is more than that of the entire dunya. The hadith of the Imam is that your value is that of Jannah. Don't sell yourself for anything less than Jannah. You're worth more. This person who has karama, when they're tested with their shahawat, their lust and their desires, it's impossible for them to be overwhelmed by their desires the way that regular people are. Hadith of the Imam, he says, Man karumat alayhi nafsu. The person who finds that inner self of sense of self-worth, he says, Hanat alayhi shahawato. This person finds that the lust and the desires, the shahawat, they're nothing for this person. Now, quick question. The question is this. How are you and I supposed to talk to children about the dunya? Right? How are we going to convince them that the dunya is worthless? The dunya doesn't mean anything. How we explain that? So 3 points. One of them is that this is again for the 7-year-olds. We're not talking about toddlers. We're talking about having conversations. As parents, as teachers, as adults who are interacting with these children, we do want to be careful about the selection of the ayat and the hadith so that they make sense for the children. But we do believe these children, they're very close to their original fitrah, they actually get the hadith very deeply. So we want to be careful with how we choose them to explain these concepts, but it's not that we want to shy away from the ayat and the hadith. Well, children can't understand them. No, they can understand them. Some people think of talking to children about the dunya as lecturing them, talking to them, having a long lecture about it. Over here, it's going to be more interacting and showing that through my actions, how the dunya is or isn't, right? So now, remember yesterday we talked about the idea of our legacy? When those children who are around me, they're watching me, and they see the ups and downs of the dunya, because we all are going through them, how do they see from my actions how important the dunya is? Do they see that I'm breaking, crumbling as I go through it? Because they're seeing the tragedies. They know what we're going through. Or are they seeing the embodiment of those ayat of the Quran? If we're the embodiment of the ayat of the Quran, then God describes to us what these challenges are like. He says in the verse, وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. Such days we make rotate amongst the people. Sometimes the believer is up, things are going very well. Sometimes the believer is down, but the person who's living with that believer sees how they're interacting with all of these challenges, whatever those challenges are. So for us, we want to kind of keep that in mind. Now, I want to share something else. That is that sometimes when people look at this method of child rearing, the idea that I'm supposed to actually demonstrate everything. I'm supposed to act. I'm supposed to be showing. It's the opposite of how most people want to do tarbiyah. Most of us would think of doing tarbiyah by saying, I'm going to describe for you, I will tell you, this is how you should be. I will mention, but it's the challenging part is when I have to interact with you, one, in a way that demonstrates, and two, when you're looking at me through my actions tell you that this big setback, this nightmare is really nothing to daddy or mommy. When some people look at this right way of doing these things, they're put off. They say, this is hard. If they get what we're talking about, the idea that I have to model all the right behaviors, and then they keep those conditions that I mentioned the other day in mind. Misbehaving has a disastrous effect, and I don't have to do a lot of misbehaving. It could be that I go through a test in the dunya, any of those that are mentioned or some other test, and then I really lose it. The effect on those who are watching, the terrible effect, I'm watching a mu'min talk about God in this way. It doesn't take that much to do a lot of takhrib and to destroy things. So that's one that made it challenging. The other one was that I needed to be consistent. It's not just that one time I was tested and I was brave and I was trusting in God. No, consistently, I'm doing the right things. Day in, day out, one foot after the other. So when some people see that, it becomes a little bit trying for them, difficult. I don't know if I can do it in that way. People might actually want to give up hope. I want to give you a story that's not true, though. The story that's not true is this. They said once there was a lady, and her husband became very sick. And they took him to the doctor, serious condition, and they started to run some tests on him. She went into the room with the doctor. She said, I need to know what's really happening. The doctor said, your husband has a very serious condition. There's only one way this man lives. You have to wait on him hand and foot. You have to tell him how much you love him. You have to never bother him. You have to make sure he's always happy, and then he'll live. So after she's finished speaking to the doctor in private, she came back to talk to her husband. He said, honey, what did the doctor say? She said, you're going to die. The test of doing it this way, the proper tarbiyah, is very difficult unless we remember something. What do we need to remember when we're doing tarbiyah the right way? You and I, actually, we're not the one who's doing tarbiyah of the children. It's Allah. Allah's the hadi. Allah's the guide. We're trying to implement His instructions. When we're sitting here at the feet of the Ahlul Bayt, learning from them, right? We don't want to forget who's really doing this. Yes, if we were going to go through this alone, and we were going to seriously say, how do I do tarbiyah of another human being, Allah's greatest creation? We would say, yes, that's a big test. But we're not doing it alone. We have Allah with us. Hadith now. The hadith says this. Our Imam is actually praying but teaching us. He says this, Ilahi ma adhyaq at-tariq ala man lam takun dalila. How narrow is the road for the one who doesn't have you as a guide. If I didn't have you as a guide, yes, this would be impossible to do. We're not doing this alone. The Imam says, another, Anta sahalta lahumus sabil. God, you made the way easy for them, hatta wasalu. And then they made it. Then they arrived. So, the first thing would be to remember that we're doing this with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As long as He's there, we're trying to implement His rules, the Ahlul Bayt, then yes, it becomes easy. The other one that we want to always keep in mind is tawassul. When we do hit those curves, those difficult times, we're trying to hold on to the path of Allah. We're trying to teach it the right way. We're trying to maintain our faith. It's challenging. Our dunya, whatever it is challenging. We never want to forget the Ahlul Bayt and tawassul to the Ahlul Bayt. With their help, anything can be accomplished. I want to give you guys a true story about one of Allah's awliya. And then after that, inshallah, we'll go to the majlis. This wonderful man, his name is Ayatollah Sayyid Muhammad Mahdi Langarudi. Now, I actually met this man. Actually, by the grace of God, he did a big favor for me and my family. Wonderful man. But this story that I want to tell you is not from me, meaning I didn't hear this from him. But wonderful, wonderful man, great individual. So, this Ayatollah, he's telling a story from the time of the Shah. He used to have these wonderful stories, by the way. Inshallah, his soul benefits from this and all of those who have passed. From the time of the Shah, he tells a story. He says, I wanted to go to Hajj. I really wanted to go to Hajj. As in, I was pushing, I was trying, but it never was the case that my financial affairs would be in order. It just wouldn't work. I'm trying, I'm pushing, but it's not working. He says, one year, actually I had a dream where I saw myself doing tawaf around the Kaaba. He said, incidentally, that year, my finances also came together. He said what happened was, at that time, this is the time of the Shah, you used to have to go to Tehran to get your passport. So he's living in Qom. He goes to Tehran to try and get his passport. And in the military ran the passport department at that time. So he goes over there to look for his passport, and they tell him that actually, we apologize, but the time for getting your passport is over. No passports. Let's say it was last week. That was the end. He says, but is there any way, making an exception, maybe you can talk? Say it. This is a no-go. You can't, no time. He pushes, he tries. The thing is, they didn't really know who this Sayyid was. He had like holy determination. He came the next day, again, trying, pushing. He started calling his friends. In Iran, a lot of times it's who you know. He's calling other ulama, who you know, maybe this person knows this, right? Calling, no go. Coming and showing up himself in his libas, trying to. Finally, the head of the passport department came to see him. He said, Sayyid, I'm just going to be real with you. The legal time where you were able to get your passport has passed. It's a no-go. We're not giving you the passport. If you keep pushing, I'm going to have the cops take you away. So he said, okay, I got it. Message clear. He went back to Qom. When he went to Qom, he spoke to his mother, actually. And he told his mother, he's like, look, his mother said, what happened? Trying to go for the passport. They won't give it to me. Time passed. His mother said, inshallah, you go next year. He said, no, it has to be this year. So he goes to Mafatihul Janan. He goes to the Quran. Every kind of dua that can come to his mind, he's reciting everything he can. And then after that, next day, he goes over and he goes back to the passport office. Shows up outside there. He says to his surprise, there's a guard waiting outside there. And the guard tells him, Sayyid, oh, we're looking for you. Bismillah. He said, well, what happened? He said, the colonel told me that Sayyid who's coming, you take him, you bring him to my office with complete ihtaram and respect. So he goes over to the office of the colonel. They ask him, do you have passport pictures? He said, no. They bring a photographer. They take the pictures. He said the whole thing literally takes a couple of minutes. They go over and they issue his passport, Bismillah, and he's now going to leave, about to walk out. He said, but it just occurred to me, like, what happened? So let me just ask these guys. So he's about to leave the office and he turns around and he looks at the colonel. He said, what happened? I mean, yesterday it's a no-go. You're going to bring the police. There's no way to get a passport. Today, ihtaram, you're giving me the passport. What happened? The colonel said, Sayyid, why don't you leave while you're still ahead? Yeah, got it, okay. Take the passport from me. Gets ready to go. Then he said, you know what? Since you asked, let me tell you. He said, last night, I told you no. Go home, dinner, everything like that. He said, I got a stomach ache. It was so bad, I called the doctors. The doctors come to see me. And there's nothing wrong with you. You're okay. He said, but the pain was so intense, it's like it's going to kill me. He said, I was ready to die, but relieved of the pain. It seemed it started the same time he's making those du'as, it started for him. He said, my wife was kind of religious. This is before the Shah, the time of the Shah. He said, my wife was kind of religious. The doctors say, there's nothing wrong with this. She said, did you do anything to somebody? Maybe zulm, oppression, did you do? He said, no, well, there was the Sayyid. I told him to get out of here. I told him to call the cops. She said, just make the niyyah that you'll fix the thing for him. He said, oh Allah, I will fix the problem of this Sayyid in the earliest time possible. He said, just then it was like, everything happened. He said, I realized it was your fault. He said, but I made the niyyah. I said, inshallah, I'm going to come over tomorrow. First things first, I'm going to go over and I'm going to take this. So Sayyid gets the passport, alhamdulillah, and he now heads out. He says, when I go to the airport, so he spends the day in Tehran getting him stuff ready, signs up with a travel agency. He's now going to the airport on the day where he's supposed to fly. When he goes to fly out, he says that it was a Russian plane. And the plane wasn't working. The mechanics over there, they're fixing it. They tell them, they're like, go home, come back later on in the day, come back after Asr. Sure. Goes home. It's a place in Tehran, because he's from Qom. Goes over. They come back in the evening, and still in the evening, they're still messing with the plane, fixing the plane. But they've gotten it to start. Now they allow the passengers to board. The passengers board. The plane takes off. He said, when the plane takes off, we get up to cruising altitude. We go away. We're heading towards Jeddah. And suddenly, the engines stop. This is in the old days. And as soon both engines stop, we're now in free fall. He said, we are hurtling towards the ground. The people, everybody realized, no noise from the engines. We're all going to die. Either we'll burst into flame, we'll break into a million people. The people, he said, some were crying, screaming. Some people were vomiting blood. They were so terrified. And they realized we have a Sayyid here on the plane. So like, Sayyid, you're going to visit Allah's house? Tell us what we should do. Some dua, dhikr, tell us something. Plane crash. He said, all of you, from the top of your voices, together say, Ya Sahib al-Zaman. The Imam controls everything. And the crew, not crew, but the Muslims all together, Ya Sahib al-Zaman. And the plane, suddenly, it stops from being crashing. The engines start. The pilot somehow is able to get the plane. They go, they land over there in Jeddah. When they land in Jeddah, then everybody gets out the plane, they're checking the plane, stuff like that, but the pilot says, I want you to wait here. So the pilot explains. He said he's talking in Russian because he doesn't know Farsi. There was a doctor on board, and this guy could speak English. So he's speaking English to the doctor, he's translating. He said, tell him to say what I'm saying. So he says that the plane, we had a mechanical failure. We had fixed the engines first, then we had a mechanical failure. We've checked the engine parts. The parts are new now. This didn't just happen. I heard you guys say something. You shouted something. What happened? So then the Ayatollah is talking to the interpreter. He said, well, we believe in God. The guy's a communist. We believe in God. God has prophets. The last prophet is Muhammad. He has 12 successors. We called out by his name. So the guy, what do I have to do? Because now I've seen the unseen. I've seen the ghaib now. Like, what do I have to do to become a Muslim? He says, well, you have to say Shahadatain. Guys, the guy says the Shahadatain. He teaches him how to make salah. He talks to him. He said, well, financially, how are you doing? He said, well, I'm a pilot. I'm making money. He said, it's wajib for you to make Hajj. Okay. And literally, the guy went and made Hajj with them. Anyhow, our point, back to our original discussion, you and I have a great support system. You're not going through the world alone. You can always reach out, and the Imam can turn things around for you. We end with salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على فاطمة وأبيها وبعلها وبنيها والسر المستودع فيها. All together let us call our Imam, Ya Sahib al-Zaman. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت محمد يا قرة عين الرسول يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا. إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيهة عند الله. اشفعي لنا عند الله يا وجيهة عند الله. اشفعي لنا. Oh Allah, we don't know whether we will get to see another Fatimiyya. Maybe this is our last Fatimiyya. Oh Allah, as long as we are alive, don't separate us from this holy household. We don't have anywhere to go other than the door of this family. Tonight is the second night, the night before Our Lady Fatima departs from this world. Let's take our hearts to Medina. It is at this time Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein are still little children. Imagine how the children are feeling. It hasn't been long since their beloved grandfather, the beloved Prophet, has left this world. And now they must bear the pain of separating from their mother. Wa ummah, wa ummah. Every day they see their mother rising from her bed in pain. Maybe they know these are her final days, but tell me, what child would accept such a thing? What child doesn't have hope that their mother will heal? It is said that on the final days, the women of Medina came to visit Fatima. When the women wanted to leave, Imam Hassan and Hussein were standing next to the door. As the women were leaving, they said to one another, "It seems that as we see the condition of Fatima, she won't last any more than a couple days. How must you have felt, Ya Hussein? How must have you felt, Ya Imam Hassan? How must have you felt, Zainab?" The narration says, on the final days, Amir al-Mu'mineen made his way home from the masjid after praying Salat al-Dhuhr. As he is reaching his home, the ladies of Medina approach him. He sees them weeping with extreme sadness. He says to them, "What has happened? What is this commotion?" They said, "Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, hurry towards seeing your Zahra. We don't think you will see her much longer." Amir al-Mu'mineen began moving quickly until he entered the house. He sees his Fatima laying down, twisting and turning left and right from the pain. He throws his cloak from his shoulders and his turban to the ground. He came close until he held the head of Fatima on his lap. He called out, "Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra." He calls out, "Ya bint Muhammad al-Mustafa, O daughter of the Prophet." But no matter how he called out to her, she didn't respond. So finally he called out, "Ya Fatima, kallimini." "Oh Fatima, speak to me, for I am your Ali. Fatima, it is your Ali. The narration says she opened her eyes. She looked at the face of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Both of them began crying, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, what has happened to your heart when you saw your beloved Zahra like this? Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra, Ya Zahra. On the final night, Lady Fatima had become bedridden. She was unable to get up from her place of sleep. Some narrations say the lady wasn't even able to move from side to side. Then how and with what strength were you able to rise on a night like this? She rose from her bed, and on this last day she cleans the house one final time. She bathes her children. She cooks the final meal for her beloved Ali and her family. When Amir al-Mu'mineen enters the house, he says to her, Ya bint Rasulillah, are you feeling better? She replies, No, Amir al-Mu'mineen, I'm doing my final duties. I'm preparing to depart from this world. I heard my father say to me, tomorrow you will join us. Imagine the pain in the heart of Ali, in the heart of Hassan, Hussein and Zainab. Lady Fatima says to Imam Ali, my dear Ali, come sit by my bed. I want to tell you my will. She began giving her wasiyah. Then she says, Oh Ali, are you ready to hear my will regarding my burial? He says, yes, I am ready. Whatever it is, I will carry it out for you. She says, bury me at night. Put me in my coffin at night. And don't inform anyone of my burial. Ya Fatima, Ya Fatima, Ya Fatima, Ya Fatima, Ya Fatima.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. يا فاطمة Oh mother Ya Zahra Open my eyes, I saw you there. You showed me love, unseen elsewhere. Thoughtful you were, you kept me sane. You were with me in laughter and pain. Your face is bright, it resembles the moon. Oh my mother, oh my mother. I can't believe that you left me so soon. Oh my mother, oh my mother. You used to sing a lullaby. I dreamt of floating in the sky. I saw the angels passing by, showing me your place above high. You'd be awake, I'd be asleep. You'd caress me as I would weep. You think of me though far apart. You knew the way to mend my heart. Your face is bright, it resembles the moon. Oh my mother, oh my mother. I can't believe that you left me so soon. Oh my mother, oh my mother. You used to sing a lullaby. I dreamt of floating in the sky. I saw the angels passing by, showing me your place above high. Wish you were here, wish we could meet. I'd kiss your hands and then your feet. You flew away, my pain constant, but in my heart you are present. Your face is bright, it resembles the moon. Oh my mother, oh my mother. I can't believe that you left me so soon. Oh my mother, oh my mother. Oh my mother, ya Fatimiyya, how they've left you bleeding in fire. How you've been pressed against the floor, how they've crushed you against the door. You taught your lovers how to fight, defend the truth with all their might. They have become stars in the night. They have become our source of light. By Hajj Qasim Abu Mahdi, we make a promise to Lady. From Al-Quds to your Medina, your flag will wave high, dear Zahra. Your face is bright, it resembles the moon. Oh my mother, oh my mother. I can't believe that you left me so soon. Oh my mother, oh my mother. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.